Here's the story of a person attending college taking the first steps to achieve their dreams in life, but end up having a roommate that makes college life a nightmare. Enjoy. So, a little background before I get into the story. I'm currently a 20-something-year-old gay male living in Iowa. I'm a big guy, but I've always struggled with depression and social phobia. This meant I didn't make friends very easily, and when I did make one, I became pretty clingy about them. By the time I got to college, this had mostly cleared up, but I still had some issues with it. Hopefully, this will help explain some of my actions in this story. In my freshman year, I decided to attend a college on the opposite end of the state from where I grew up. I wanted to feel independent and thought the distance would help me to break out of my shell. I was very wrong. I immediately became more depressed than I had already been, and after only 2 weeks of living there, I started having suicidal thoughts. It didn't help that the guy I ended up becoming friends with throughout the summer, and who I was supposed to be living with in the dorms, ended up not going to college at all, leaving me all alone in my dorm room. That's when I met Josh. Josh was another freshman on my floor, and after a brief conversation, I discovered he was bisexual. I immediately became attached to him, as I had no other friends at the time and I felt like we had a lot in common. Before you ask, no, we never had sex. He wasn't really my type, and I didn't want to ruin a friendship that way. Anyways, we became friends rather quickly, and about a month into college, Josh asked me if I wanted to move with him into a different dorm room and building. Neither of us could afford to have a single room, and he said he knew people in the other building that we could hang out with and not feel so secluded. Being a little naive, I agreed, and within a week, we had packed up and moved all our stuff into the other building. I didn't start having issues with Josh right away, but after a week or two, I started noticing some things that made me uncomfortable. I noticed that my DVDs had been moved around and sometimes they were left laying about without being put back in their cases. I'm really protective of my things and of my DVD collection, and I wasn't alright with him using without asking. I brought this up with him and he said he would stop, but he never did. I also noticed that I was being sexiled, as I like to call it, many times. About once a week, I would be forced to leave my room for hours on end. Normally, I wouldn't have cared. I had no problem sitting in the dorm lounge until he and his partner got done, but he always chose to do it fairly late at night, sometimes even after I went to bed. I'm not a night person, and most of my classes were early in the morning. I got really upset about this and voiced my displeasure about it. Again, he said he would stop, but he never did. And another thing, he would kick me out of the room about once a week so he could have sex, but I was never allowed to do the same. Every time I asked for privacy, he would complain about having a lot of homework he needed to do, and that he hated doing it anywhere else but his room. If I didn't have a partner, I would try to have some alone time with myself. Whenever I would get started, he would always happen to walk in on me and tell me to keep going. He said he would just ignore me and listen to music, but I don't think he ever did. There were also a couple of other things that I didn't really think much of at the time. Now, I'm not so sure how innocent they were. For instance, I had to buy underwear about 3 times in the few months that I was living with him. I didn't think too deeply about it, as I knew the college laundry rooms are notorious for having things stolen, but looking back, I'm not so sure if it even got that far. Also, I remember him being really obsessed with horror movies. At first this was great because I'm a huge horror fan myself, but he preferred films with extreme gore, whereas I preferred films that had a good story and atmosphere. He used to repeatedly watch films like Saw over and over, and I vaguely remember waking up one night to see him touching himself while watching the remake of I Spit on Your Grave. I wrote it off as just scratching his leg, but now I'm not so sure. Like I said, these were little things, but they started to get to me. So, before Thanksgiving break, I decided to look for a new roommate. I ended up finding one and had signed all the paperwork needed for me to switch rooms, but I had to wait until the end of the semester. I told Josh about this, and he seemed to take things just fine. Thanksgiving break came and went. It was only about 4 days, but it was nice to see my family again and get some time away from Josh. When I got back, I found that Josh hadn't left campus for break like he said he was going to. In fact, he had taken all my stuff, even things that were in the closet and drawers, and had thrown them into a giant pile in the middle of the room. He had even gone so far as to buy new clothes to hang in the closet, so that I didn't even have room for my own. I complained to him and reminded him that I wasn't moving out for another 3 weeks. But he simply stated that he didn't care, and that if I was going to leave, he might as well help me out a little bit. But this wasn't the last straw, and I still stayed there for another week. That is, until he pushed me past my limit. On my last night there, I'd asked him if I could have the room to myself for a few hours, as I wanted some private time to Skype with my long-distance boyfriend. He didn't seem upset about it. He grabbed his homework and laptop and left the room. After a couple hours, I finished my Skype conversation around 10 p.m. and texted him saying he could come back to the room anytime he wanted. I stayed up for a couple more hours browsing the internet, but he never came back. I didn't think anything of it and went to bed. At about 2 or 3 in the morning, I was suddenly awakened by the sound of death metal blaring at full volume that even the RA down the hall was awoken by it. This was followed by a really loud bang as someone just slammed the door shut. I jumped up and shut off the music, finding a CD of Josh's in the player, and on the table he left a note as well. "Next time, don't treat your roommates like shit, or else you won't wake up at all." That was my breaking point. I had done nothing to him that would even be considered treating him like shit, and I was terrified about that threat he had given me. I called campus security and they came out and took my statement. Since Josh wasn't there and hadn't done anything illegal, security couldn't do anything about it. The officer advised that I stay in a friend's room for the night and that I move out of the room as soon as possible. I told my RA and the head of the dorm building the situation, and they gave me permission to start moving out the next day. I didn't have any other issues with Josh after I left, but my story doesn't end there. About halfway through the next semester, I walked into the main lobby of the dorm building and saw Josh with all of his stuff next to him, and he was talking to a couple of police officers. Not campus security guards, mind you, actual police officers, one of which never took his hand off his gun the entire time he was around Josh. At first I just laughed and figured he'd gotten into some sort of trouble that he probably deserved. That is, until I was brought into the dorm office the next day. There were a couple of police officers who asked me questions about Josh, like, why did I stop living with him as my roommate? If I knew anything about him having used any kind of illegal substances, if I've ever known him to be a violent individual. I told them everything that I've told you, and that the only substance I ever saw him use was a little marijuana. I asked them why I was being questioned, and what they said made my heart drop into my stomach. Apparently, Josh was into using a lot more than just weed. He apparently had started using cocaine, meth, and even heroin at some point in his short college life. About a week ago, high on heroin and other drugs, Josh ended up severely attacking another student in one of his classes. He had smashed his face with a heavy textbook and apparently also stabbed him with a pencil before running out of class. When he got back to the dorm, he completely trashed the place. He ended up breaking his TV, his gaming systems, DVDs, CDs, even the college chairs, desks, and the windows, all of which belonged to the dorm building and not to him. He then took more drugs and ended up overdosing, which put him in the hospital for a week. When he was released, he was banned from the campus and the police were there to make sure he had gotten off the premises before midnight. Luckily, he didn't have a roommate when all of this happened, so no one else but the student from his class ended up getting hurt. Still, part of me wonders what could have happened if I had still been his roommate and had been home during his drug-fueled rampage. Would he have attacked me as well? Am I lucky to even be alive right now? I never saw or heard from Josh ever again, and I'm beyond glad about this. I have since moved back to my hometown and I'm going to school there. I have never had any other major problems like this incident when it comes to college. but I still wonder what could have happened if I hadn't gotten out of there when I did. So Josh, the roommate who made my first semester of college a living hell, let's never meet again. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.